Dave was a happy kid. He loved playing with his neighbor and exploring the world around him. He was always inquisitive. One of his favorite questions was why. Why are things there? Why do they work? So he was always looking, always exploring. If you asked him today, he'd tell you that even as a child, he knew somehow he was destined for greatness. Even before he really knew what that meant. He just knew there was something there. Dave came from a good family. His parents loved him. He got along with his brother and sisters. He always had food and clothes and a warm place to live and all that kind of thing. But the problem is, there was something missing for Dave. He was never encouraged to grow, to know who he really was. He never really discovered his true purpose. So even though he had that good home, there was something missing for him. One of the things he grew up knowing is that it's very important to be in control. For their family, emotions were scary. Emotions were too vulnerable. So it was a very controlled family emotionally. So he never had a chance to really explore a lot of those kind of things. If you looked at his baby pictures through grade school and high school and all that, you'd notice something. The smile, the happiness began to fade over time. It wasn't a deep pain or a lot of hurt there. It was just more a loss of joy and inquisitiveness that kind of drained out of his life as he grew older. When he was in the 5th grade, at a family Christmas party, Dave discovered alcohol. He didn't know why, but he just knew it made him feel better, feel happy. When he was in the 9th grade, he got introduced to smoking pot. And it just grabbed him. And about every day after that, for the next few years, he smoked pot. And see, drugs and alcohol did a couple of magic things for Dave. One is they allowed him to experience his emotions. He could feel, he could laugh, he could do things that he couldn't do when he was sober. And the other thing it did was it allowed him to experience, to explore his leadership skills. See, Dave was a natural leader. People would just follow him. People would do what he said. His ideas would take over, people would do that. And he was too inhibited normally, so when he would be high, when he would be drunk, he could explore that leadership. So it released something in him that he really enjoyed and held on to. And one of the things that it did for Dave, he had this natural desire to be an entrepreneur. Now the problem is, when you're an entrepreneur with drugs, that tends to be a pretty short-lived business. So in the 9th grade, Dave's empire came tumbling down when he got caught, got expelled from school for the rest of the year. And for the next couple of years, he wandered, he struggled. He recovered from being expelled, but he was never able to let go of smoking pot and drinking and all that kind of thing. He started smoking cigarettes along with that. He tried several times, but he just couldn't let it go. But then in the 11th grade, just because his buddies did, he tried out for spring soccer. And he really enjoyed it. And so that fall, he decided to sign up for the team, and he went out for soccer and he made it. And I don't know if you've ever watched or played soccer, but there's a ton of running in soccer. So Dave realized running and smoking just don't go together.
Right.
So he decided, I need to quit smoking. And he did, just like that. He stopped smoking cigarettes and pot and never looked back. Now, why? Why was he able to do it then, when for years before that, he couldn't find a way to do it? Why is it that two people have a heart attack or a stroke or get diagnosed with diabetes? One of them makes long, life-lasting changes, and the other one tries for a while and then falls back into the same habits that got him in trouble in the first place. That's what we're going to be exploring today as we look at breaking through these lasting motivations. Motivation is there. Everybody has motivations, but we try things and it fails over and over. So we're going to be looking at what gets in the way of that and how we can change those things. First, I want to say thank you. Thank you to MyCap for bringing me in and giving me a chance to do this. Thank you to you guys for coming. It would be a little embarrassing if people walked by and I was in here talking and nobody was in the room, so I'm glad there's people in the room. So thanks for being here today. We're going to be looking at this stuff, and I think you're going to find it valuable for you. Before you leave here today, there's 3 things I want you to be able to take away. We're going to be exploring what I call lower order motivations and higher order motivations. So that's a big part of what we're looking at. We're going to be looking at toxic motivations and how they block the goals that you have. And then we're going to look at discovering authentic motivations. And I'll be explaining each of these as we go. But that's what I want you to be able to have when you leave here today. First thing I want you to do, groups of 3 or 4 or whatever, we're going to just talk about a couple of things. I'm going to give you 45 seconds, so it's not very long. But I just want you to sort of brainstorm about some of these questions as we're going into this. So the first one is just what is motivation? Okay? So if you want to turn around and kind of get with people, as soon as you kind of get set up, I'll start the clock here. So just see if you can come up with a definition in 45 seconds of what is motivation. All right. What kind of stuff did you come up with? How do you define motivation? It's not easy to do, especially in 45 seconds. What'd you come up with?
I can share.
Okay.
The will to do something, starting with a goal, and having an end result, and the incentive to achieve what you
Okay.
want to achieve.
Okay, so there's a goal involved, there's an incentive, there's a will, a desire. Okay. What did you guys come up with?
I didn't come up with it, but it was discussed. The pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change.
Okay, yeah, that's a motivation for people, yeah. It's hard to change, but what I have now is worse, so I'm going to go through the hard part. Okay, good. And as we're talking about some of these things, kind of keep in mind, we haven't talked about yet what I mean by lower order and higher order motivations, but just kind of keep that in mind as we look at it. What I'm going to have you do next is, why do we make goals and resolutions and not follow through? Why does that, I mean, that happens every year, all the time. Why does that happen? We don't often think about why, but talk about why that happens. Go ahead.
Easily distracted.
Yeah.
Okay, what'd you come up with for this one?
Yeah, I think we're afraid of our own success too.
Go ahead, say that.
Yeah, I think that people tend to be afraid of their own success, so we kind
Why?
of
I agree.
sabotage.
Why?
I don't know why we do that.
Don't know why. Okay, that's a good point, and that we'll get to that as we talk about some other things down the road. But yeah, that's a big one. I want to do this, but I'm afraid. What if I do it? I've heard the idea of a dog chasing a car and then finally catches the car and then says, "Now what?" You know,
Right, exactly.
Okay.
We came up with a few bullet points. Not creating steps to actually complete the goal, so having a big picture without action steps.
Okay.
Fear, like what they were saying, distractions, lack of support, lack of discipline, unattainable goals, so creating a too big
Okay.
of a goal where
Sure.
you know you're setting yourself up for failure. Or you didn't make the goal yourself, like you don't believe in it. Somebody else created the goal.
Okay.
Bless you.
Any other thoughts with that? Those are all good ideas. They're good thoughts. Okay. Now this one, kind of similar, but it's a little, digging a little deeper. What force overcomes our desires and determination? Some of the things you mentioned fit in with this, but think about it a little bit more. What is it that's out there that you really want to do something, you know you need to do something, but something overcomes it all the time? So go ahead and talk about that for a few seconds. Right. So what'd you come up with this one? What is that force that overcomes our motivations?
We sort of all kind of agree on areas of laziness.
Laziness, okay.
It's just,
Okay.
you know.
That's a good thought. And we're gonna touch on that in just a couple seconds, so.
We think that having an obligation to others, you can't think about yourself.
Okay.
Being at rock bottom,
Mhm.
just being defeated or having a defeated outlook, like you're never gonna
Mm-hmm.
get there. Addiction, other kind of problems
Okay.
like that.
Yeah. And all of these answers, along with what I do at the college, I teach a couple of psych classes. I have Psych 101 classes. And, you know, in Psych 101, there's tons of stuff to cover, a lot of material. And there's 16 weeks, but I still take 2 weeks to talk about motivation just because it's so important. And when I ask students these kinds of questions, these are the general things that come up, the way that we look at motivation, what gets in the way. And a lot of then what would overcome these problems might be just a little more grit, a little more, you know, I got to kick myself and get up and do it and try harder and all that kind of thing. I want to give you a little different way to look at it because I think even if I try harder and push through, I'm going to get tired again. There's something I can only do it for so long. I decide I'm too lazy, so all right, doggone, I'm getting up at 5 o'clock and I'm going running, or whatever the case might be. There's still something that gets in the way. And so that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to kind of move from our general view of how motivation operates into something a little bit, a new way of looking at it. My thought, what I want you to think of for motivation, I'm almost going to personify it, okay? Think of it as a force that comes against somebody's will to move them in a certain direction, okay? As a person, I like to think of us as we have body, soul, and spirit. Sorry, I lost my thoughts there. We have a body, soul, and spirit. The soul part, psychology comes from soul, that word. The soul part is where the mind, will, and emotions are. You have your mind, you have your thoughts, you have emotions that go with things. The will, if you think of your will, that's kind of the boss. He's the one in charge that can overrule emotions. He takes in the thinking, makes the decision, this is what you're going to do. Okay, so we have will here. Motivation is kind of an outside force that tries to influence that will to go certain ways. So like I said, think of it, it's not, I don't feel like getting up this morning. It's not really a feeling as much as that motivation is something that's trying to direct me, okay? So think of it that way. And as we look at this, we talked about goals before, and goals being different than motivation. I want you to think of that. Goals are the stuff I want to do. I want to get my bachelor's degree. I want to get a better job. I want to lose weight. I want all these different things. So we have our goals. And behind those goals are motivations. And like you said, it might be somebody's goal for me. So the motivation might be, I need to please you, so I'm going to go ahead and do this. And, we've probably all tried that kind of thing, and it works for a little while, but then if I'm losing weight for my wife to please her, when I'm not with her is when I eat the cheesecake. She's not home tonight, so I buy Sunday at McDonald's and bring it home and eat it real quick and throw it away at the gas station so she doesn't see that I did it. And you know what I mean? So it's not internal, so it's not enough. So we have goals and motivation. Now we're going to be looking at lower order motivations first. Lower order motivations are the ones that, maybe they're the conscious ones that come in. In other words, like, I want to lose weight, and the reason I want to lose weight, the motivation is so I can fit in my pants. I realize, okay, my clothes don't fit anymore, summer's coming, I need to lose some weight. Or it comes to winter time and my jacket fit last year and I put it on, I can't zip it, so, okay. So I have a goal, and a lower order motivation is to fit in my pants. I decided this yesterday. This morning I come down, and for breakfast, instead of scrambled eggs and spinach, they have rolls and bagels. And I think, ooh, that really looks good. And if I eat fruit, it's not going to last me till lunch and I'm going to be distracted, so I probably should get something a little heavier in me. So I'll have a bagel today. And maybe I won't put quite as much cream cheese on it. And something is getting in the way of my motivation to eat healthier and to lose weight. And then, okay, today won't matter. I'll just eat. And we work through things. I had this motivation to fit my pants, but suddenly, my pants are on, so I'm okay. I'm better than a lot of people, so I'm all right. And something derails that motivation. Another one, get a better job to make more money or to get more respect. So the goal is to get a better job. The reason is to make more money. It's hard to get a better job. You have to do your resume, you have to call a bunch of people, you have to do all this stuff and do all this work. After a while, you get all these no's, it gets derailed. This isn't enough of a motivation to keep pushing me through a lot of times. Getting a degree. You know how hard that is working with students that they start and so many of them quit. I mean, that's why TRIO was here, to help keep them moving on. And sure, I want to get a good job, but, oh man, what do you mean 15 credits? Or it's where are we at, like the 12th, 13th week, somewhere in there, wherever we are, people start dropping because it's just been too much, too long. I got jobs, I got this, I got that. Hey, do you mind if I turn in the assignment 3 weeks late because everybody's got excuses? That motivation, the good job is so far out there, whatever it is, it's hard to follow through. Get in shape just so I can look better. Goals and lower order motivations. Now what about people who don't have any motivation? People who are lazy. The teenager who just spends his whole day playing on the video game, or the person that just sits at the bar, they've tried to get jobs over and over and finally just give up. I want you to think about, I don't think that people don't have motivations. They may not have the motivation that we think they should have. They may not have the motivation that would be healthy for them, but I do think they're all motivated. You might be motivated to escape pain, to avoid fear. It scares the heck out of me to try another job interview when I failed so many times. I tried college before and I failed. I've tried relationships and they fell apart. So I'm not going to put myself out there because of fear, because I want to escape pain. So that can be a very strong motivator. The kid who's playing video games all day long might be escaping pain. That might be where he's found success so he can feel good about himself, so he's motivated to keep doing that. Comfort. I feel like there's a motivation in me to move toward comfort. And when I'm upset, I just had a fight with somebody, I go eat comfort food. Well, that overrules my motivation to lose weight. So it's not that I just can't get myself motivated enough. Usually what we really mean by that is I can't get enough grit. I can't force myself to do something that doesn't fit who I am. It's really this going on. And how you see yourself is key, and we're going to come to that as we look at things here. Higher order motivations. So we have these lower order motivations, the conscious ones that are there, the ones that we first think of when we want to do it. But higher order motivations are the kind of thing that overrule the lower order ones. They're loud, but they're in the background. I grew up and we had these power lines going down our road, big power lines. And at first they were on wooden poles, and now when I go back to see my folks' house, it's these huge metal poles, with the lines and everything. I had a friend over one day and he said, "How can you stand that noise?" I said, "What noise?" Well, he could hear the power lines, I couldn't. Or people that live by a train track. How do you sleep when the train goes through at 3 every morning? I don't ever hear it, because you get used to it. It's there, it's very loud, but for you it's in the background. A ringing in your ears. You might have ringing in your ears for weeks at a time, and at first it drives you crazy, but after a while you forget it's there. That sort of thing. So that's what these higher order motivations are. They are there, you do have them, but we often don't pay attention to them. We're often just focused on these conscious lower order ones. They overshadow those lower order motivations, and they can derail them. Like I said, that idea of I'm going to lose weight now, but then my boss is mad at me, and so I go and grab a donut because they're in the break room, because that's what helps me feel better. That motivation that I have to be comforted overrules the motivation to fit into my pants. So there's that, but I don't really often think about it. That's the thing with the higher order motivations. That's what I mean, they're in the background. They're there operating, but we have to force ourselves to think about them to see what's there. Because you can't change something if you don't even know it's there. Dave, who wanted, as a kid, he wasn't thinking, I want to experience my emotions, I want to be more free, so I'm going to use drugs to help me be more free. But that's what was going on. His higher order motivation to want to be free tied into, wow, when I smoke pot, I feel more free. So that would overrule, even though he wanted to quit. He'd quit for a while, but then he'd feel so contained, he decided, okay, I need to get high again. Now I can laugh and I can have fun. And so that would kept taking over for him, even though he didn't know it was there. With these higher order motivations, we need to either embrace them, either alter or embrace them if you want to live your best life. We're going to talk about two kinds of higher order motivations. One of them you need to deal with, you need to alter, you need to get rid of, however that works for you. The other one is a higher order motivation that really fits who you are, that you need to embrace. And then that will give you what you need to work through. So that's where we're heading with this. When of higher order motivations, we have toxic motivations and authentic motivations. So try and picture with me as we go. We've got your goals and these lower order conscious motivations that you have. Above that, we have higher order motivations. One grouping of those are these toxic motivations that we'll talk about. Another grouping is your authentic motivations. 'Motivations. Dave's now in college. He always wanted to be a small business owner. He was an entrepreneur. That was in him. That was something that was there. He tried it with drugs. I mean, he didn't just have fun smoking pot. He decided, I want to sell pot. And he liked making money. He liked buying, splitting it up, making a little bit extra. He loved the process of that. So he always had it in him to be an entrepreneur. In grade school, in high school, he found these, a bunch of old spotlights and some switches, electrical switches. So he and his dad put it together and created a light show. And he worked with a DJ for a while doing light shows. And he made business cards and put them up on boards all over to try and get more business, did a little bit of that, worked with a band for a while when he was older. He also, while he was in high school, he did a car washing business, where what he would do is, you'd call him, and he'd come to work, pick up your car, take it back to, he was living with his folks, take it back to their house, wash it, vacuum it, take it back to work for you, then get the money and come back home. And so he had this car wash business, so you can get your car washed while you're at work. So he did that for a while, created flyers, put them up around town. His sister worked at the hospital, so there's a lot of people there, so she would sell them people. So he did that for a little bit. When he was in college, he started a lawn mowing business in the summertime, so he'd take care of yards. Again, had a name for it, made flyers, did all that kind of stuff. But there's something that you'll see in the pattern with that is, he had these great ideas, he got started, had a lot of motivation to get started on things, but he didn't follow it through. Just a bunch of businesses that started and didn't ever see the completion to really take off and turn into anything. And so there we could say maybe he was lazy, maybe he just didn't have the gumption to see it through. Maybe he's ADD and starts new ideas and then starts another new idea and he's just all over the place. But there was something going on in him. As we look at these higher order motivations, I want you to think about the physical laws that we have. There's law of gravity. If this clicker fell out of my hand, nobody's going to look up there and say, oh, okay, it went that way. You're all going to look at the ground and say, it rolled under the table. You know, the law of gravity is there. We just know it's there. And the law of gravity says if you drop something, it falls towards the center of the earth. If you take several tons of metal, a couple thousand feet in the air and let it go, it's going to fall. So why do planes fly? There's another law. It's a law of aerodynamics. That if you have the fuselage shaped the right way, if you have the wings the right way, if you have enough resistance against it, it causes that several tons of metal to fly. The law of aerodynamics is a higher law than the law of gravity. It doesn't make the law of gravity go away, but as long as that law is in operation, it overcomes the law of gravity. Think about the higher order motivations that way. They overcome those lower order motivations. Now, if they're the toxic kind, they overcome and derail them. If they're your authentic kind, they give you what you actually need to see it through to your goals. So as we look at higher order motivations, they're not really about gumption or willpower. They're all about your identity. How do you see yourself? Once Dave saw himself as a soccer player, smoking didn't fit with being a soccer player. It just didn't make sense, so he quit. That's how change can happen. It's an identity change. So higher order motivations, think about them in that way. The law of gravity is overruled, superseded by the law of aerodynamics. Now, of these higher order motivations, I've talked about toxic motivations and authentic motivations. We're going to look at the toxic motivations first. So these toxic motivations, examples of this, negative names. And by names, what I mean, in some cultures, like Native Americans or in the biblical times, a name was more of a sentence. It was either a prophecy for you, it was a reflection of who you are, that sort of a thing. Chief Sitting Bull was a famous Native American chief. When he was a kid, he was the son of the chief, but the name that he got was Slow, because he wasn't as quick to catch on to a lot of things. And so he was called Slow. Now, what would that do to a person being grown up with a name of Slow? You know, that's going to affect everything about you. But what happened is, when he was 10 years old, he killed his first buffalo. When he was 16, a tribe attacked them, and he took an adult warrior, off a horse with a tomahawk. And that changed everything. And the chief, whose name was Sitting Bull, gave it to his son. You are now Sitting Bull. So that changed. His identity changed. It's tied in with the name. We get names as we're growing up. Maybe you're the problem child. Maybe you're the slow one. Maybe, well, yeah, he's just got ADD. All kinds of names that we get. I'm the one that didn't fit in the playground. I'm the one that, I'm just not good at sports. I'm not that smart. Those kinds of things. We get names from either other kids at school, from teachers, from parents. These names are toxic motivations. Let's say I have a goal, and I have a good reason to do that goal, to achieve it, and I have this lower order motivation that says, okay, I'm going to do this, but I have a name in the back of my head that says, that's not you. You can't do that. That's going to overrule, and it's going to keep getting in the way. You can't consistently act differently than who you believe you are. Let's say I go to the doctor, I find out, okay, my blood pressure's high, my cholesterol's high, I'm pre-diabetic, I need to lose 50 pounds. But what I see myself as, well, let's even look at this here, false beliefs. Who I am, I'm a fat guy who's going to try really hard to lose some weight. How's that going to work? I'm going to go to the gym, reward myself after a half hour of treadmill with a pizza. Because, that's what I do. That's who I am. What if that gets in the way of those goals? Those names that we picked up. The false beliefs we have about ourselves. Inaccurate identities. You have so much more on your side, so much more going for you than you realize. And we have these inaccurate identities of who we are and what's possible for us. Yesterday, Lynn talked about the elephant idea. When they train baby elephants, they put something around their ankle and just a rope, just big enough to keep the baby elephant tied to the stake. And it pulls and pulls and pulls and it can't get away. When it's an adult elephant, that same little rope will keep it there because it's convinced I can't pull it out, even though it could just walk away. They took pike and put them in a big fish tank with a lot of minnows, and they would run around eating all the minnows, having a party. Then they put a glass down the middle and had the pike on one side and the minnows on the other, and the pike would bang him into the glass. And he'd do it enough times till he bruised his nose up, and then he'd quit trying. Then they lifted it up, and the minnows could swim right around his face, and he wouldn't even try to eat them. Because he's got this identity, I can't eat minnows. And that happens to us, those identity things, inaccurate identities. Comfort can be a toxic motivation. Now, it's not wrong to be comforted, obviously. But if I have a motivation that I have to have comfort, as soon as I get to the edge of my comfort zone, I run back. Because, this feels wrong, this doesn't feel good. So, maybe it's just with wanting to learn how to meet people more. Wanting to have a little better job. You apply for it and then you think, oh, no, somebody else deserves it more, and you run away. Or that comfort food idea. Comfort can be a toxic motivation for us. Or distraction. When life gets hard, I want to be distracted. We're in a relationship, we're having a fight, and I go watch football. I'm going to distract myself with alcohol, with food, with work. And that distraction becomes a motivation that overcomes even the good desires that I have. As Dave grew up, he started looking at some of this stuff. Started discovering some of his toxic motivations that he had. He found out, how you have these memories from childhood that kind of seem totally unrelated, but if you look at them and really kind of get into them, you realize, wow, that was really significant. That's why I remember it. He had a memory of talking to his principal when he was in 7th, 8th grade. They had apparently taken an IQ test. Now, he didn't remember taking the test, but he remembers this little 20-second talk with the principal when he said, hey, how did I do on my IQ test? And the principal said, oh, no, we never tell students how they do because we don't want anybody to get proud. Okay, so then he just kind of wandered off and forgot about it. But after seeing that in his memory, he started remembering, too, that his mom often said, it seemed like out of the blue at the time, didn't even make sense, I would never want a child who's a genius because they always have a hard time making friends. They don't fit in. So I wouldn't want a child who's a genius. She said that several times over time. And at the time, it's like, okay, what's that about and went on. As he started working through this, he realized, wait a second. Why do I remember these things? Why are these significant to me? And so he decided to take an IQ test. Now at the time he was scared to death to do it because he didn't see himself as smart. In fact, when he got asked to be in high school in a AP class, and he started it, but because he didn't see himself as AP, he dropped the class, and his mom said, yeah, I kind of wonder why you took that in the first place. The teacher saw it in him and asked him to do it, but it didn't fit with him. So he's scared to take an IQ test because he's afraid, what if I find out I'm painfully average, and all this time I've thought maybe there's something special about me and there's not. Well, he took the IQ test and he has a 136 IQ, which is genius level, which fits with, wow, I wonder if they knew that back then, and they told my parents, but my parents were afraid of it, so they squashed it, and so this followed me all my life, and I always felt like I'm not very smart. So he struggled with that through there. So that toxic motivation that was in there for him. Another one, he was given a name. For him, a name was that you're a dreamer. He's a very creative kid. But for them, for his family, dreamer wasn't a good name. You know, it was, you're a slough off. If you tell them his ideas and his fantasies and his plans, they would listen, but just kind of, okay, that's nice. As soon as you walk out the room, we'll forget about it because it's never going to happen anyway. And so he was given that kind of a name. And for him, then that became part of what would get in the way of following through. I have this great idea for a job, for a business, but as I get going and it gets a little bit tough, I'm just a dreamer. It's never going to happen anyway. And so it would go away. But then it would rise up into a different business. And that just kept coming and going throughout his career. That's why he started and stopped, or started all these businesses and just kind of let them die out. He didn't know how to push through the hard time because it didn't fit his identity. I'm just a dreamer anyway. He, though the emotions for him that were blocked, the belief that those inaccurate, the false beliefs that emotions are dangerous, emotions are bad. You need to be in control of your emotions. If you let your emotions out, somebody might laugh at you and then they get the upper hand. You need to keep the upper hand by just being very stoic. And so that became an issue for him, where there was a time in high school he remembered he broke up with somebody and he was talking to a friend and they said, I can't believe you're not sad. And he said, I can't cry. I'd like to, but I can't. I can't cry. So his emotions were so contained because of that. So those false beliefs got in the way. So you have this higher order motivation, these toxic motivations, that in spite of his best efforts to change, wouldn't allow him to. You change for a little while, but when these beliefs are there, and that's who your identity is, you can't contradict that for very long. What we're going to do, one of the things we want to do with these toxic motivations is discover what they are. So I've got an activity. Would you mind handing these out behind? There's two sides of it. We're going to do the discovering toxic motivations first. And what I'm going to do is just give you a minute to walk through. Once everybody gets them, I'll explain the questions and so forth. In a situation like this, it's tough. I know, I've been out there to write down something that's real personal, because you start getting these feelings, everybody's looking over my shoulder and seeing what I'm writing, and that's cool. If you want to just do a couple of notes right now and then take it home and work through it later, and in a few minutes, it's going to be tough to do this. But what I want to do is at least just trigger some thoughts going this way. Because if we can figure out what those toxic motivations are for us, it can help us to then overcome them to work through that process. So the first question on here, and I'll do these one at a time and just give you a couple minutes in between to work on each question. So we'll just do them together one at a time. That first one, write down the first things that came to mind when I started talking about negative names or false beliefs or inaccurate identities. What came to mind for you as we looked at those? That second one, first, let yourself think about a secret dream that you have. The one that you only tell your closest friends, the one that, if it came true, would make your whole life perfect. So think about that. Let yourself feel what that is for you. Maybe it's getting a doctorate, maybe it's starting a business, maybe it's moving to Hawaii, maybe it's whatever that is, that one thing that really would do it for you. As you move towards this dream in your mind, allow yourself to hear the voices talking to you in the back of your mind. Listen to the ones that are trying to block you from moving toward that dream, and then write those down. It costs too much money, there's no way that can happen. What about your parents? Whatever those Just let yourself go toward that dream and then write down the voices. And then that last one. Think about the last big goal or resolution that you made. Maybe it was to lose 20 pounds, study for a certification, write every day in your journal. What got in the way of that? Hopefully this can kind of get the wheels moving a little. And like I said, take this home with you. Spend some time thinking through this. See what those things are for you. Because those are those behind the scenes higher order motivations, toxic motivations that are derailing the goals that you make with the best intentions of your lower order motivation. That doggone, I'm going to do this. I got the grit. I'm going to try. I'm going to make it happen this time. This comes in and blows it away. What we need to do with these as we discover them is rewrite them. You remember your first speech class in college? I was just a quiet, inhibited kind of person. I had my speech class. She kept trying to get me to be more outgoing or whatever, more to speak better, I guess. Literally her ultimate appraisal of me, one day she told me, you know, John, if I ever met you at a party, I wouldn't want to come over and talk with you. So she told me, you really should never speak in public. That was my college professor's evaluation of me in speech class. So that had to be rewritten for me. You know, I love doing this. And to have a professional tell you, yeah, I wouldn't even want to talk to you at a party, you know, that's a toxic motivation. That gets in the way. That's an identity thing, all those kind of things. They have to be, you have to grab onto them and really evaluate them and then rewrite them in some way. One way to overrule them is with your authentic motivations. Your authentic motivations, some examples of that. Back to the people that had the heart attack, had the stroke, they made this long life change. They changed who they are. You could have the motivation that, okay, I have to lose weight so I don't get diabetes. I have to eat better so I don't have another heart attack. You can have, they're there, but if that's all there is, that's still the guy that then eventually goes back and eats the same way after a year because, you know, I really like ice cream, so I'll be all right. I made it through the first one. They have valve replacement. I can have another one if I need to, you know, that kind of thing. An example of an authentic motivation is I want to live. Now, I don't just mean I don't want to die. I mean I want to live. I don't just want to die young. I want to live to be 92 or 110. And when I get to that age, I want to be healthy. I want to live. I want to experience life while I'm here. I want to know my kids and grandkids. I want to enjoy the work I do. I want to live. That's an authentic motivation. That overrules the toxic motivations. That's a way to rewrite them. I tap into this authentic motivation that more than anything I want to live. And I start changing the beliefs of who I am because these affect my identity. And then I come down and there's only bagels and fruit. I think, well, I'll just eat a little extra fruit and that'll hold me over till lunch. I'll be fine. Not because I'm trying really hard not to eat bagels, but because bagels no longer fit with my identity of who I am because I want to live. And people who live eat a certain way. And that's who I am now. That's an authentic motivation. Your secret dreams. The ones you don't listen to anymore. The ones you had as a kid and you got rid of because you grew up. And, you know, this is life. Those secret dreams. Dave's desire to be a business owner. That was a secret dream that he realized, you know what, the best I can do is probably work for somebody. I'm not that smart anyway, so I probably even should be a manager. I'll just get a job. If I get a good job, I'll be fine. But what are the secret dreams that you have? Those deep knowings inside. Dave always knew there was something special. All of you have something special. And you know it. You may have blocked it out over the years. You may have quieted it over the years because it can't happen. That's not really for me. That's just, you know, of course, who wouldn't want that? You know, everybody wants to be an NBA player. So my dream is just like that. Everybody wants that. So you downplay it. But you have this deep knowing inside of you. That's your authentic motivation talking. You have a created destiny. You were created for something in this world. You're not just happenstance. You were created to change your world in some way. You were put in your world. You weren't born in India. I mean, I don't think, maybe if you were, you came here, you're here. You weren't. You were put here for a reason. There's a world that you're a part of that you have a destiny to affect in some way. Now, some of the attributes of your authentic motivations, some of the things you need to keep in mind, because the lower order ones come and go really quick because there's not a whole lot of depth to them. I want to fit my jeans. Okay, that's cool, and maybe I'll diet for a couple weeks and I start feeling better, but they come and go really quick. Authentic motivations are different. So there's a couple things that you need to keep in mind about the attributes of them. First of all, they demand ongoing life-altering behaviors. An authentic motivation of I want to live, in the way I was talking, isn't just about I'm going to eat less for the next 6 months, or I'm going to exercise more until summertime, or you know what I mean? An authentic motivation demands ongoing life-altering behaviors. I'm going to become a different person. If you grab onto your authentic motivations, they are going to change you, and you have to be ready for that. I mean, it's a good thing, but it's a serious thing. It's change. If it changes your identity, that's a change at the very core of who you are. And these authentic motivations require an identity change. And it's not just for the next little bit as long as I have the energy. This is who I'm going to now be for the rest of my life. It's a life-altering identity change that they require. And the other thing is they demand your full attention. In other words, let's say I realize, okay, I went in and I'm pre-diabetic, so I really need to take care of my body better. I've realized I haven't been a good dad to my kids. So it's, I've got 2 or 3 kids, and I really don't spend enough time with them. I spend too much time at work. And I've always had this passion to start my own business. If I try and take all 3 of those authentic motivations at once and put them to work, it's going to kill me. I might have to decide one over the other. Let's say I decide, okay, I'm going to be a better dad. That's who I am. I'm not just the busy guy who doesn't know how to talk to his teenage kids. I'm a dad. I have it in me to be able to relate to my kids. That's who I am. I'm going to find out what that means. I'm going to grow into that. And I allow that authentic motivation to take over and change me. And then as I do that, maybe my desire to start a nonprofit, I say, hey kids, let's do this together. And so then I imply that motivation. It's neither implore nor imply, but anyway, I take it and I work that motivation now. As I'm building my relationship with my kids, I do that. I guarantee as you're doing this, you're going to start eating healthier, your weight's going to adjust, and all that kind of thing. But then then you can say, okay, I need to really now focus on I'm a healthy person and so forth. But if you try to do everything at once, it's overwhelming. Because authentic motivations, to change an identity is an every moment thing, especially at first. I'm reaching for that donut, I say, wait a second, that's not who I am anymore. I have to, it's tough to make that change. It's a conscious effort, so you can't change everything at once. So to get that life-altering change, it takes our attention. It's not necessarily a lot of willpower. It really isn't willpower. It's a change in our thinking, a change in my belief of who I am. It's a lot of work to change who I believe who I am. But I'm not trying really hard to act differently. I'm trying to change how I see myself, and then if I change how I see myself, my actions will follow. An athlete gets up and goes running every day. So as I change and become an athlete in my identity, I'll start working out more, because that's what athletes do. So it's that kind of thing. I don't try to change behavior, I try to change the identity. And you grab onto that authentic motivation for you. Dave came to a point where he started discovering his authentic motivations. He found out by doing that IQ test that he actually is smart. Now, it still took him a couple of years to embrace that. At first it was, the psychologist liked me, he probably skewed it a certain way. Or, I bet if I took it again, then it would be a lot lower. So and all these thoughts of, well, okay, IQ tests aren't necessarily an indicator of a whole lot anyway. And it took him a long time to get through those false beliefs and false identity to really embrace that, wow, I do have a good mind and I really enjoy how my mind works. And pride didn't come out of it. Satisfaction came out of it. Self-appreciation came out of it. Thankfulness came out of it. That, wow, this is how I'm made. I get to do this. So he realized enjoying who you are doesn't bring pride. He worked through that. He took that idea of being a dreamer and he reworked it. And he embraced it as, yes, I'm a dreamer. Dreamers change the world. It's not a bad thing to be a dreamer. So he was able to take his name, that name, false name that was given to him, and embrace it and turn it into a good thing. I might need to take that name, the name for Dave of not being very smart. He had to change that, rewrite it. But some of them you embrace. And for him as a dreamer, he said, yes, I am a dreamer. I have great ideas. I'm very creative. I think of new things. So he embraced those authentic motivations. He realized, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I like starting things, whether it's a new project at work or starting a new business. That's who I am. I like doing that, and that's okay to want to do that. And even if I'm the kind of person that gets it started and gets it rolling, puts somebody in charge, and then I go start something else, that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm flighty. That just means I like creating things. So he embraced those motivations that he had. So what we need to do is discover first what our authentic motivations are. So on the back of your page, I was going to hand out a page. You got it. Flip it over on the back. Same kind of process for this one. So first, the first question. Think back to grade school or high school. What was an accomplishment that made you feel proud or good about yourself? You know, maybe you made it on the basketball team. Maybe you had a solo in band, whatever. Something that really made you feel good about yourself. So then you're going to write that down and then answer the following questions. What was it about that activity that made you feel good? Was it that you pushed through something difficult, organized a group, completed a presentation? What was it about that felt good? Did you enjoy working together with the team or working alone? Was it the process that brought joy or the fact that you finished it that gave you the feelings of accomplishment? And then look for patterns that you see in there. So take a minute and kind of think of an accomplishment in high school, grade school that really, that grabbed you, that you enjoyed, felt good about, and then kind of work through some of those questions. The second question on there. If you ask your friends to describe you, what would they say? We often have a hard time seeing ourselves through our own glasses. How would your friends describe you? That can give you a hint to who you are. They might say you're a really nice person. They might say you're a funny person. They might say you're a hard worker. What would your friends say? Your real friends. The third one, who do you look up to? And then, so think of somebody you look up to. What characteristics does this person have that causes you to admire them? I think we tend to look up to people that are a higher version of ourselves in our eyes. So the characteristics that you respect in this person are probably in you and just need to be drawn out. And then number 4, if you could do anything, and don't consider income, presentability, or any other obstacle, what would it be? With that last one, what you want to think about is what is it about that? What are the attributes of that sort of a thing? Like you might put, I'd like to be an astronaut, or I'd like to play professional baseball or basketball. Well, at this point in life, I'm not going to. That's just not in the cards for me. But what is it about that draws me so much? Maybe it's the exploration. Maybe it's pushing myself to the limits. Maybe it's, so a lot of times this can just give you a hint toward what some of your real motivations are. And then at the bottom, my authentic motivation. See if you can come up with a couple to write down there. As you look at this, as you kind of see what you just processed, what pops out for you as some authentic motivations? Now we've taken, 3 minutes to work through this. Think about what this could do for you if you sat down on an evening or a weekend and had a half hour or an hour or a whole afternoon to really think through some of this stuff. Both the toxic side and the authentic side. I encourage you to give yourself some time to really work through this. Set the paper aside, come back in a week, look at it again some more, and see what that is for you. If you think about the authentic motivations are going to give you what you need to rewrite those toxic motivations. And then that supersedes those lower order motivations. But to get to this, you kind of have to go the other way. You start with realizing, okay, this is a lower order motivation. What's really in my head? What are those thoughts that I'm feeling? And you have to face those toxic motivations before you can really embrace the authentic ones. I got to face that those are there. I have to see, wow, that is how I see myself. And every time I'm up in front talking, I'm hearing Mrs. Sears say, wow, I never want to even talk to you at a party. So then I automatically think, well, they don't want to hear it, never mind, okay, I'll go. And that's how I would actually be, is I'd start telling a story, and my thought is, they don't want to hear it, so I'd say, well, you know, and stuff like that. And just stop my story and let you talk. And I became really good at being a listener, so that helped with being a counselor. Great at drawing it out of you, so I don't get the attention. But I had to see that toxic motivation to then be able to embrace the other. So the authority comes this way, but the discovery comes the other direction. And so it is a process, and it is a tough thing, so that's a good analogy of it. With our authentic motivations, we need to embrace them. Once you find them, even if it scares you to death, and it's just, you know, you're not going to say, okay, I'm going to quit my job and be an artist. You're saying, I'm going to make a space so that I can start being who I am. And as you embrace them, they'll make room for expanse. So we need to embrace those. We need to go through that identity change. And as you're working with students, that's part of what, a big part of what you'll be doing, as they start seeing that it's not just a quick thing on, oh, okay, I guess I need to just change the career that I'm going into. What's behind that? What's really there? And then start embracing who you are to make that identity change. So that's part of the answer to that. And then we need to live them. Go ahead and be who you are. Be who you were created to be. And it's scary, and it doesn't fit. At first you feel like you're a phony. You know, I'm living as if I'm an athlete when I know that I'm really not. Well, no, this is who I really am. I know I really am an artist. And I'm going to act as if that's true. And as time goes on, your feelings start coming into line with you, who you are choosing to believe that you are, and then your feelings will come along, and then it'll be a lot easier to do what you're doing. But we need to live them. It's an active thing. It's very tough. It's not more willpower, but it's choosing to change how I believe about myself. And that's the work of this. Once I discover it, then the work starts, and I'm going to choose to change how I believe about me, who I am.